again, then the second struggle is that tradition versus experimentation. And some people would look down upon experimentation of any kind, and it should be tradition. I said, tradition has always been changing. 50 years back, the same art form was performed in a different way. If you see the evolution of Indian classical music, it has been changing. If you go 100 years back, it was sung in a very different way. Right? Now this microphone culture, and you see Zakir Hussain playing tabla when he's accompanying some vocalist. So he would get a chance to play tabla at a stretch for 3 minutes, 2 minutes. 50 years back, a tabla accompanist was just strictly confined to accompanying the vocalist. So it had been changing. So I always face this question by many people, oh, but don't touch it not, okay? Oh, exotic. It's so wonderful. How can you do that? Are you bringing this new element? Oh my God, it'll kill it. I said, no, this is my art form. I have grown up with it. This is my property, and I'll do whatever I want to do with it. Of course, having said that, if it is you, your blood, your flesh, you also don't want to kill it. So I do want to retain all those wonderful elements that we all enjoy, but at the same time, I want to bring in new themes or new messages or new ideas that are contemporary that can actually reflect the times where we are, so that this art form has some hope and some chance.
I'm not interested in Cambodian classical dance being a symbol of Cambodianness or anything. I practice the art form in a spiritual capacity, and the way that I understand it, Cambodia has, the art form has roots in Brahmanism and Buddhism and animism and ancestor worship. So the way that I understand the art form is that the gods gave knowledge of the arts to human beings as a means of finding truth and transcendence within the world, in a world that's decaying, in a world that people are killing each other and raping each other and constructing illnesses and stuff like that. And so for me, I see the dance as not only a spiritual tool, but also as a political tool. And so whether it's elevating my own life or my experience onto the ritual, mytho-poetic space in which Cambodian classical dance is set, or queering certain Cambodian myths, or just looking at the art form in relation to all other arts, of serving that purpose of creating well-being, creating vitality, creating life. I see my artistic practice as having rich spiritual import, but also political import. And and the way that I work is I feel like in a wholesome sense, where I don't need to jump up and down and ornament myself with Cambodian classical dance gestures and say it's new and say it's fusion. I think that's really disrespectful, because you're employing all of these different elements but not utilizing it fully. And so I use the language, use the history, use the conceptual and spiritual foundations of the art fully. And if it means that I need to replace the Pinpiat orchestra, which is the traditional orchestra, with 2 sound artists, then I'll do that. If it means that I need to bend or break a certain gesture, then I'll do that.
The other thing which I wanted to point out is in my artworks, and when I'm saying this, I'm just talking about my artworks which I have done from 2009 onwards. The same old phrases I take, like for instance, melting pot, and try to create a discourse through the same old pots and pans which is available in your house. And in India, we used to cover it with mud and put it on chula or stove. But here, which doesn't have so much of meaning because you are using gas stove, right? But how we try to hold on to those traditions which we had and freeze in time. So the artworks dies its own death. Because if it doesn't have a relevance, it doesn't have a meaning, and if it doesn't connect to people, so in a satirical way, I try to comment upon those situations, and try to create new meanings through it.
My visual practice intends to stress those points of tradition. I sincerely, and I guess this is where I do put my foot down, and this is the same discourse on both sides of the border, is that I do believe that community needs tradition, that community does need to have an empowerment, an element of power. It's hard in my neighborhood, the neighborhood in which I grew up and in which I practice and I center most of my work, is Colonia Libertad, and it's the first Tijuana neighborhood, and it's fenced. It's right against the fence. I mean, literally houses had their fourth wall was the wall and built upon that wall, and so we have 3 more fences, and it's called Libertad, which is freedom, and it was like, how can my neighborhood be called freedom? It's hard. I mean, that would be our issue of empowerment. That to me would be I mean, we have to form our tradition on migration, and it's hard because migration is free, and people making that decision to stay requires a lot of free thinking. It proves not to be ironic.
For one thing, I think it is a very popularly misconceived notion that traditions are frozen. It's a myth. Traditions, given in their dynamic and original settings, are never frozen. They're continuously evolving. And that's a myth. And that myth is carried on in the diaspora because it's the nuggets, it's the icons, it's the notions that are preserved in minds. And I think one of the challenges that the immigrant artists have is to dispel this. And I think you are doing it. And then the challenge becomes, how is this going to be supported? How is this going to be recognized? And how is this going to be known in the general public? How are we going to penetrate the opera and the symphony?
Last year, when CounterPULSE gave us this opportunity to create a Nautanki, so I kind of hit 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm a vegetarian though, but you know, what is this? You hit 2 birds with 1 stone? Okay, yeah. So as a folk artist, it was great for me because it gave me an opportunity to bring new issues in my traditional art form and make it relevant. And at the same time, I think I was really satisfied with my team members. They were also very satisfied that we are bringing attention to an issue which is very relevant and contemporary and affecting many lives in India as well as here. So it was satisfying on both fronts. And inspired by that, as a Nautanki artist who sometimes gets too much passionate and angry about high art versus ordinary art, I get inspired by these performances to use my art to bring in more issues that are facing us today, and in that process get empowered. So it's amazing that, you know, how art can empower you if you really put your soul into it, and just don't do the rituals of continuing what has been going on, you know. So in that sense, I do think that art is touching upon or can touch, upon the contemporary issues or the issues that are relevant to immigrant communities here.
And when I came here, it was like as I was talking to you, Kutay, it was coming out of a dream, thinking when I came here, I thought wherever in corners I will go, there will be art galleries, there will be kids doing art, and it will be on street as we used to perform in India. There will be street theater, and people will be so into art everywhere. But the scene was totally different. Here, the art exists only in galleries and museum. There is so much less space for people who are experimenting or want to communicate their message through art or want to do socially relevant art. So still, as an artist, I think many of us, whether they live in New York or in suburbs, we all need to, shake up the community a little bit and go and get connected, not let them be in isolation where they think art only exists in San Francisco and not in San Ramon or small cities here. And I think it's partly because of artists, we think we are on pedestals. Our space is just gallery or museums, and we are not looking beyond it, the possibilities where we can go and look for audience and create new kind of audience.
This idea of a traditional arts community, what is that? These art forms came here through very different means. Some communities are here as a result of war and devastation. Some are here very steadily and through prosperity, and so some dances are dances of acculturating a proper woman, whereas some dances are dances of resistance and the will to survive. And
in my visual arts, I try to do the same thing, but I try to incorporate everybody else's discourse or the people around me in their discourse. So that brings out different cells of creation to a point in different fronts. And then there's where community work starts. But just putting your voice out there creates a resonance. And that to me it's important because it brings out the conversation.
Art does not change in itself conditions, but at least it can start the conversation and dialogue about issues.